once you've installed your tank onto your wing, the next thing is to start skinning. We like to start with the bottom skin, and what we've done here is actually taken some duct tape and duct taped the skin onto the wing. We duct tape both pieces. We then go in the back, and with a marking pen we mark where all our ribs are. You can put little flutes where or little marks where your flutes are, and you can mark where your rear spar is and where your forward spar, and actually draw a little map right on your skins. From there we'll take the skins off and we'll go ahead and mark them for drilling and drill, put them back on. While you're doing this, we've already marked where our inspection plate is to go, and we've already cut that out. We'll also still have the bottle jack in the center here, and this is just to make sure we don't give any bow in the wing, and we still have our strings through our holes in our forward and rear spar to check the alignment. So from here we're ready to take these off and mark and drill them. When marking your skins for drilling, there's a couple tricks that'll help you. One, your rivet spacing isn't in nice 1/2 inches or 1 inches. They're 1 1/4, 7/8 of an inch. So what we've done is taken some strips of stainless steel and actually marked them off 1 1/4 inches on one piece, and then another piece may be marked 7/8, and we can just lay them on the skin and we've got our measurement. We don't have to sit there and measure each spacing. The second thing is the placement of the rivets. You want to be careful not to get the rivets too close to the edge of the rib. This is the bent edge of the rib right here, and you don't want to get your rivet line too close to there. One, you have trouble getting your dimple dies in, and you can actually break a dimple die if you get it too close to that bent edge. Two, it makes it very difficult to buck. Also remember that this rib goes down beyond on into your spar, so when you're marking your spar, the bottom of your spar, where the rivet line crosses your rib, you want to make sure that you have the rivet in the center or outside of the rib, not close to that edge. If you look on your sketches that's in the manual, all your rivet spacing is there. They're pretty self-explanatory. The top skin has one difference, and that's where your wing walk area is, and you can either use blind pop rivets in that area or you can use the regular rivets. You can buck these rivets, however, if you reach in through the end of the wing, or pop rivets are acceptable. The pop rivets will be covered with your wing walk material. When you put your top skin on, however, this is your top root skin, after you've drilled your skin, when you go to put it on your ribs to drill, you have to put your wing walk material underneath your skin, and you can just drill through both your wing walk material and into your ribs. So these are just some little hints that will help you get your rivet spacing just where you want it. And from here we'll go ahead and drill this skin, and we're ready to put it on and drill it into the ribs. Just like the manual says, we've started with the outboard skin, and we started in the center here, and we just worked our way down and out, and then as we came to another rib, we just continued that down and out until we worked our way all the way down. Now, we've also done the inspection plate, and where the screws would be for the inspection plate, we've put 1/8 inch holes and clecos in it. Now we're ready to start the inboard skin. The inboard skin has the overlap where your splice line is. So you want to start again right in the center, and then just start out and down and work your way right on out. We've got the duct tape pulling the skin up as tight as it can be. Get a nice tight seal. Nice and tight all the way across. And we've got some cleco side grips holding it down here on the end. And like I said, we're just going to start right here in the center. Putting a cleco in every hole, and now from here we'll work our way down and to the sides and just continue going. Now that the bottom skin's all clecoed on, what we like to do is go ahead and take it off and deburr it. Next thing we'll do is get the top skins out and repeat the procedure. We'll go ahead and tape the top skins on, mark them from the inside, take them off, drill them. Before we drill them back onto the wing though, we'll go ahead and put our bottom skins on with some clecos. And this is just to maintain alignment, make sure nothing can shift. And then go ahead and drill the top skins on. Once we clecoed the top skins on, before we took them off, there's one other thing you have to remember to do. And that's right here, the 619 gusset. If you remember at the beginning of the tape, we discussed making this rib here, how we had to cut it out for the aileron bell crank. And we also told you to leave, or told you that we leave one rivet out right here, and that's where that gusset hooks in, and also hooks into the skin, and that's to stiffen this rib up. So what we do is we take this section of bottom skin off, which gives us very easy access to the gusset right here. We go ahead and use the one hole, and we just clamp the gusset in place and drill it in place here, and then mark the skin, take the gusset off, mark where we want to rivet, drill the skin, put the gusset back on, and drill from the back side. And we're ready to go. That's all drilled on. Now what we'll do from here is actually leave the top skins on. It's a good place to keep them out of harm's way. And we'll start preparing the bottom skins for riveting. Once we've dimpled all our ribs and we've dimpled our skin, we've placed the skin back on with clecos, and we're ready to rivet the skin onto the bottom of the wing. Now the pattern we'll use for riveting is identical to the drilling. We'll start in the center at the top and we'll work out and down, and we'll just keep working out and down. Now when you're riveting a large skin like this, it helps to have a little system with your bucker. And we've worked out where I'll put the rivet in and I'll put the rivet gun on it and I'll say okay, and when she's got the bucking bar on it and she's ready, she'll say go. And we'll just use that pattern, so I don't have to see what she's doing, she doesn't have to see what I'm doing. And we'll just work this all along. Once we've got the tip skin on, then we'll come back here to the root skin. Now, before you do your splice line right here, you want to do your root skin, and you start in the center and work out and down and out and down until you get to your splice line, and that's when you do your splice line. So from here we're going to go ahead and get our safety gear and get all arranged, and we're going to start riveting.
Ready?
Ready?
Go.
Ready?
Go.
Up on the seam.
Got it.
Ready?
Go.
And with riveting complete, there's the bottom skin all done. Now a couple things to remember is, one, you can do your inspection plate now. Don't forget to put your plate nuts in. Cut your inspection plate out to fit in there. Dimple these holes and it'll screw right in real nice. Okay, you can go ahead and finish up your pitot tube. Screwing this down real tight, hooking your pitot tube line on. And then from here we're ready to start with the flaps and the ailerons, and we'll start with the flaps first, and we'll show you how we do those next. Next thing we construct is the flaps. Now the flaps are fairly easy to construct, but they are a little tricky. So what you can do is start by just manufacturing or making some of your components. First you start with the bottom of the flap, and what you need to do, the first thing is cut a notch at the tip end. Also cut the same notch at the root end. The notch will be a little bit bigger, and they have the size of these notches on the drawing. Then on the bottom of the flap skin, you can mark where your flap ribs will go, and actually mark where you're going to drill your holes for those ribs. Now you do not want to drill the furthest back hole in your rib. That'll be drilled with the splice line of your top skin. Next thing you want to do is fabricate your flap spar. and it's a little tricky because it is a top and a bottom to the spar. The easiest way to tell the top and bottom is to take your spar material and actually set it up on your plans. And you'll find it'll only fit one way, so then you'll mark top and bottom. You're also going to want to mark tip and root, because your root end of your spar gets cut at an angle. Once you've got this angle cut, then you can go ahead according to the plans and cut all your lightning holes in your spar. Next, you want to go ahead and fabricate your flat brace. Now again, this has a top and a bottom because the angles are different. And again, you can just take the material and put it up against your plans, and it will only fit on there one way. The full-size drawings are pretty good for this. Once you've got top and bottom designated and root and tip figured out, then go ahead and drill your lightning holes according to the plans. And once they're cut, of course they're polished and deburred. Next thing you want to do is fabricate your 606 pieces. And that's your 606B, your 606A, and your 606C. And we'll talk about these more later on, but just fabricate them right according to the drawings. Then you want to get your flap ribs out, and you want to designate the bottom of the rib so you don't get it wrong. And you can look right on your drawing, and it'll show you that that your tooling hole is closer to the bottom than it is to the top. So look at all your ribs. Go ahead and mark top and bottom just so there's no mistake. Go ahead and clean the edges off, clip the corners, and then you're ready to start assembling. We start assembling by drilling the holes in the bottom of the root of the flap skin. We start by drawing where our ribs are going to go on our bottom skin, and we do this according to Sketch 52. Now, little word of warning, Sketch 52 will show you a right side flap, while your drawing 17 shows you a left side. So you may want to just mark that on there and keep in mind that you got to mirror some of these things. So we've drawn a line where our flap rib will go. We've also drawn a rivet line, and that's where we'll do our drilling. Now, one thing we've also done is we've drilled the 1/8 inch hole for our rivet in the end of our rib, and that'll be put in just like that. And after we've drilled the holes in the skin, we will drill a hole, and we have already, into the back of the flap skin and hook the rib on. Then what we do is we take a Cleco side grip, and we'll actually reach through like this and grab that rib. That'll hold the rib in place. From here we can turn it over just like this and back drill through our holes into our flap rib. So that's the procedure, and we'll show you how it goes. Flip it over. Now we essentially just back drill right into our ribs, Clecoing as we go. And you can check, just make sure it hasn't moved. Once we've drilled and Cleco the ribs in place, then we drill and Cleco the rear spar, actually the forward spar, in place. And only at the points where it contacts the ribs. We don't drill it to the skins yet. Now from here we'll go ahead and place the top skin on and get it in position. Once we've got the flap spar attached to the ribs, then what we do is go ahead and put the top skin and the bottom skin together and put them in little block jigs similar to what you used on your elevators and your rudder. This will keep your alignment and keep it nice and straight for you, and it also gives you a good solid surface to work on. Then the next thing you want to do is get your end adjustment, and it's supposed to be 10.5 inches from the trailing edge of your flap up to your spar, and you can adjust that, and this is held here with some side grip clamps. Once you get that all adjusted, then you want to go ahead and mark where your final drilling will be, and that's for your spar, both top and bottom. And also you want to mark your line for your splice where your top skin splices to the bottom skin. Once you get all the marks that you think you need, go ahead and take it all apart, draw your rivet lines, put it all back together, then we put it back in the jig, and then we're ready to drill it all together for the final drilling. Once you've drawn all your rivet lines on your skins and gone ahead and drilled your skins, it's all ready to be put back together now. Some tricks about finding your rivet lines is you can actually look through the holes in your spars and mark where your ribs go. You can also mark where your spar is. You can mark that on the top skin. So most of your lines, there's no real secret to how to find them. You can just mark them right there. So you go ahead and mark them, drill your skins, and you've got it all back together, and you've checked your end distances again, and of course you've got all those markings on so you can line it all back up the way it was, and you're ready to drill. Now what I like to do is go ahead and drill the ribs in place, and then go ahead and drill the spar in place. And we'll do this side, and then we'll turn it around and we'll do the other side. Now these little jigs, these little V-block jigs, they're different than the others. These are just for the flaps and ailerons, and you will use these on the ailerons also, so they won't be used just for this. But now it's time to just start drilling and getting ready for riveting. You can also look down inside. You can see how your drilling's coming along, and making sure your rivets don't go outside. So once we're done drilling this, we're ready to take it all apart, deburr it, dimple it, and then we're ready for final assembly of the flap. The last thing is the 606 unit, and that simply goes on the root end and just slides into the end here. It tucks in real nice and then fits in here, and there's a measurement right here. I think it's about 1/4 of an inch that it comes off that spar, off that end rib there, to give you room to get your nut and all behind there. Remember that your spar is angled here, so it has to fit into that angle real nice. It's then drilled from your spar down, and then drilled from the bottom into the assembly itself. So once you get that drilled on, the only thing left to do is to drill your piece of hinge that goes all the way along the bottom, and you just do that according to plan 17. It shows you, even tells you how long that hinge is. And what you can do is you take your clecos out, and you can just, with some side grips, clip that hinge right on here, and now just drill through the holes in your skin and your spar and into that hinge. And usually start in the center and work out will do. It's nothing too complicated. So once you get the hinge on and you got the 606 assembly on, now you're ready to take it all apart, deburr everything, dimple everything, paint all your components. You don't need to paint the outside, but you do need to paint the outside of the bottom where the top folds over a little bit, just about an inch or so along this edge right here. You want to paint a little bit, so you've got paint over paint. And then we're ready for final assembly. In your dimpling and deburring process, remember on the spar side where your flap hinge goes, and the hinge is right here, because you have 3 layers of material, you don't want to dimple these, but you want to countersink. And you want to countersink the spar and dimple the skin. Now what I like to do is cleco the hinge on, and what that allows is it allows the hinge the hole in the hinge to act as a pilot for your countersink, so your countersink bit won't walk off and on. So I've got it in the jig here, and it gives it a fairly easy position to work on. And I like to just go ahead and countersink the spar, and I'm just going to countersink it on the side where the flap hinge is. Now what I've done is put a cleco in every other hole, and I'll countersink every other hole, and then I'll go ahead and move the clecos and countersink the others every other hole. Once we've painted all the components of the flap, now we're ready for assembling. We start assembling by clecoing our inner ribs to our bottom. Then we start by attaching the end of the rib to the inside of the flat bottom with our number 4 rivet. And it's just hand squeezed in. And we'll work our way down and do all these. The next step is to attach the rib to the bottom of the skin. Now that we've got the front of those ribs attached, actually it's the back of them, next we want to rivet the ribs to the bottom skin. And what we've done is put our V-blocks back in place and leveled them all up. We've also taken some little wooden plugs. There's actually the cutouts that we cut out when we cut the V-blocks out, and we've inserted them in the ends. And that's what's holding this all in nice and tight. Remember, the rivet along this row here you don't want to put in because that'll be put in with the top skin. So we go down to the next one and put our rivet in, bucking bar of choice, and go ahead and rivet these on. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do all these, and then the next thing is to go ahead and start mating the top skin on. Now that the ribs are attached to the bottom skin, we assemble the bottom skin and top skin together, click on them all together and putting them back in the V jigs. We've also got these little triangular blocks stuffed in here, and it makes it nice and solid. So from here we'll just start with our top rivet, and we're just going to work our way right on down. Now to do this you're going to need various different bucking bars because your space is going to get smaller, so you need a smaller bucking bar. But essentially we just start at the top, a little more, and we'll just work our way right on down until we've got all the ribs attached. Then we'll pull it up, turn it around, and do the splice line where the bottom skins meet. And then when we're done that, we'll start getting ready to put the spar in. The next thing is to rivet the ribs onto the spar. Also we want to rivet the 606A plate on, because while it's off the flap we can get in here and squeeze. We've also attached the 606B and C together with the rivets, and now that these are on and these are on, we can go ahead and attach this like this, and then we're ready to put the spar into the skin. Once the spar and end ribs have been clecoed into the skin assembly, you're ready to start the final assembly. You can just hand squeeze the sides. Don't forget to put your hinge on. And you can hand squeeze all the way along the hinge. And then when you get to the back here, you've got some pop rivets that hold the 606 assembly in place. And then you hand squeeze that. Then when it comes to the top, it's a little more difficult. Unless you have a rather large hand squeezer, you can't get to these, so you have to buck these. So from here, we're going to go ahead and do our final riveting and assembly. And once you put the pop rivets in the ends of the ribs, there you go. One flap ready to go. From here we go ahead and move on to the aileron. Go ahead and store the flap away so it doesn't get scratched. And we'll show you how we work on the ailerons. Okay, to start the construction of the aileron, we do it just like it says in the book. We start with our aileron skin. Remember, you're dealing with some rather thin aluminum now, so you got to be a little careful. And you start by laying out your rib pattern or your stiffener pattern, and that's according to the drawing that's on sketch number 53. And we've drawn on here where our stiffeners will go. It's very similar to the way you did your elevators on the empennage. Once this is all laid out, then you have to make some stiffeners. And your stiffeners are made exactly like with the aileron stiffeners or the rudder stiffeners. A little different. They're only 8.5 inches long, and there's 14 of them. And we use the same little drill jig to drill all the holes in them as we did with the ailerons. The next thing you have to do is then fabricate your spar. And according to the drawings, they show you, hold the spar up here, where you drill your holes. You start from one end, and you come in 4 3/4, and then you mark off 2 3/4, and you punch a 2-inch hole all the way down the length of your spar. Then there's a couple little spar stiffening blocks that you have to make up, and these are just made out of a piece of 040. And there's a little sketch that comes with the kit that shows you where each part is cut out of your blank aluminum. And those just go on the ends. Next, you do have 2 ribs, a tip and a root rib. And the tip rib you just want to clean up, round the corners off. The root rib is a little different, that you have to cut a little semicircle out right here. Okay, and that's so there's a bolt that goes up in here, and that's so you can get in there and put the nut on the bolt. So you can use the fly cutter to cut this out. Just be very careful, and you can cut that out, and then you clean it all up. Then you've got your aileron 604 pieces. And there's a right and a left. And these are just cleaned up and ready to go. The last thing is a piece of pipe. Everybody wonders what you do with a piece of galvanized steel pipe in your wing kit. And this is it. This is going to be the counterweight that goes into your ailerons. So according to the plans, you cut this off, and I believe it's going to be 45 3/8 inches long. So you want to cut that off and file the ends nice and smooth. So that's the major components of your ailerons. Now while you're at it, you've got your aileron mounts, and they do come in a right and a left, so you have to be careful which one you get. And you can pretty well put them up against your rear spar and tell which ones you're going to need. And I've gone ahead and we've already drilled the holes in these. So these are ready to paint. And what you need to do before you paint, though, you need to file these edges smooth. They've been sheared, but they haven't been smoothed yet. So you need to file them smooth and then work them on a Scotch-Brite wheel. So once you've got all your components made, you're ready to start assembly. Now to start the assembly of the aileron, what we're going to do is place our stiffeners on the skin, just like you did for your elevators and flaps, or elevators and rudder, and drill the stiffeners into the skin. Once the skin and the stiffeners have been deburred and dimpled and painted, we're ready for assembly. Now, we back rivet these on, so we start by taking our skin and putting our rivets in it. Like I said, this is exactly like you did your control surfaces, or even the same way you put your stiffeners in your fuel tank. Put a little riveter's tape on it. Then you take your stiffener and put over top of it. And then with the use of a back riveting set, we go ahead and start at one end and back rivet it on. Remembering to use your hearing protection. And once that's been done, peel the tape off, and we've got one stiffener on. And you just do the rest of them like that. Now that we've got the stiffeners back riveted on, we're ready to finish bending the trailing edge. And it's done very similar to that of the elevators and rudder. We've taken and taped a small 1/8 inch dowel rod in the edge, and that's to stop us from overstressing and bending the aluminum too far to where it would break. We then put it in our little metal brake that we've got here, and it's just held together with some door hinges, and we put a couple C-clamps on here, and this is just to give us a little leverage. So we hold it in and we start our bend. Check it, and this takes a little bit. then you get to where you want to just catch the very edge. And just bend it right around that dowel rod. Anyway, this is how you do it. You just keep working it and working it until you get the radius that you want. And that's about it right there. That's a pretty good radius. Then what you want to do is just pull your tape off, pull your dowel rod out, and you're done. The aileron spar is fairly simple. Just follow the plans. A couple things to remember is make sure you put some flush rivets here so your mounts for your aileron have a flush surface. And just follow your plans. Now, we don't put the brackets on for the aileron right now. We'll do that when we mount the aileron on the wing itself. And we've done that on both ends, putting just the flush rivets. And it's pretty straightforward. Now we'll take this and we'll put it down into the skin and put the skin back in our V-blocks, and we're ready for our final drilling. Once we've placed our skeleton back in our aileron skin, we put it back into V-block jigs. Now, first thing you want to do is make sure that your skeleton fits in the skin where it's supposed to, and check your line right here on the skin. And what you want to do is pull that skeleton up tight so it fits in the contour of the pre-bent skin. You want to pull it up nice and tight so when you rivet that down you get a nice fit. And you do that at both ends. Now, we haven't cut this notch out yet. I don't cut anything until I'm sure where it goes. So it will be cut out. So from here we can mark our rivet lines and prepare for drilling. Now, in drilling these, pay close attention to plan 16 because it differs. The bottom gets drilled for an 1/8 inch pop rivet at 1.5 inch spacing. Along here gets drilled for the same 1/8 inch pop rivet but at a 4 inch spacing. This over here gets drilled for a 3/32 inch aircraft rivet but at 1.25 inch spacing. So you've got different spacing and different pop rivets here. So once you've marked, and you've marked where your rivets will go, start in the center and work out as you do with anything. Then once your drilling's all done, you want to go ahead and take it all apart and dimple and deburr everything, and you're ready for your final assembly. Now what we like to do is put our skeleton back in our skin. Before we do that, we also, where the skins overlap on the bottom side, make sure you put that little turn down so you get a nice fit when you rivet. The procedure for doing this is to rivet the top side here first. And so you only cleco the top side on. You don't cleco the bottom side on at all. And that's so you can pull the skin apart and actually reach in behind here and to buck. I've placed it back in one of my little V-block jigs, and that's just to support it. And from here I can get up at least halfway and be able to buck. Once I've gotten that far, I'll then turn it around and put it in a V-block jig over on this end to get the other side. But you basically just want to start here and work your way right on up. We like to use just a real small little bucking bar to get in back. And because this is very thin aluminum, you may want to be careful, turn a little air down on your rivet gun so you don't beat it up too bad. So let's show you how we do a few of these. from there you just work your way right on down. Once you've got this line of rivets in place now, and believe me, don't take this lightly. This is not an easy job. You just have to be very careful. You're dealing with very thin aluminum here. Now you want to start riveting your ends of your ribs, and you can hand squeeze those. And it's no different than anything else. You just put a rivet in once your squeezer's been adjusted. And you hand squeeze those. So we'll hand squeeze all these on both ends. Then we'll go ahead and put these pop rivets in. Once we've squeezed the rivets on the end, now we go to finish up with the pop rivets. And it's just a simple matter of getting a nice tight fit and squeeze them in. Start at the top. I usually just work my way right on across. And we just work our way right on down, finishing up the aileron. And once you've put all your pop rivets in, there you go, your aileron's finished. Now what we like to do is, don't forget, is to put that little turn down in there. It gives you a nice flat finish when you rivet these two pieces together. Also, to try and dimple this skin up in this area is very difficult. So what we do is countersink our pipe like we have to, and then once the skin's on, actually take the dimple die and put in the hole in the pipe and tap it with a hammer using the countersunk area of the pipe as the female, and that'll give you a dimple that's good enough for these pop rivets. Also remember, we have not placed our aileron brackets on yet. That'll be done in assembly to the wing. And since the aileron's done, that's the next thing, is to start mounting our ailerons and our flaps onto the bottom of our wing. We start mounting the aileron by mounting its little bracket here on the end first. Now there's a couple little measurements that you can use to make sure that you've got this bracket in just the right place. And if you look on the plans they give you two measurements. One is from the bottom edge of the aileron to the center of your hole here should be 5/16. The other one is from the center line of your aileron, which lines up with your tooling holes, to the center of your bolt hole should be 1 5/8. So once you've drilled your hole here for your bolt, you come up from the center and mark your 5/16 line, then come up from the center and mark your 1 5/8 inch line. Also, on the end of your aileron, go ahead and draw your line from tooling hole to tooling hole and put a mark there. These lines should now correspond when you put your bracket on there. Next, you go ahead and place your bracket back on your aileron. We've taken and drilled an 1/8 inch hole in the aileron bracket itself. We've now positioned the bracket, and if you can see the lines, the 1 5/8 inch line matches up with the center line. The 5/16 line, if you take a small ruler and push up, you don't want to try and line it up with this curve here because it does curve. You want a little flat edge, lines up right there. When both of your measurements match, then you're in place. And what you want to do is just take a little C-clamp and clamp that, and then drill your 1/8 inch hole down through there and just put some 1/8 inch clecos, and that'll hold that in place for you. You want to do this on both ends of your ailerons. Now your bracket's in place. Next we want to go ahead and put the aileron in place on the wing and mount our aileron mounts. You start by making your wing templates. Now on the top of your wing kit, you'll notice there are two little drawings of the wing. And what you need to do is take that and cut that out, make yourself two little pieces, nail some boards on. That's so you can clamp these together. This gives you the shape of your wing. And if you look at it, you can see this is the bottom and this is the top part. You want to put a little duct tape around it to protect your aluminum. Once you've made both of these up, you're ready to mount your aileron onto your wing. Next, we've taken our two clamps that we made and clamped around the wing. Clamped them up at the top first so the bottom could be spread till we got our aileron in here. Now our aileron is in perfect alignment with the wing. Okay, that's the perfect shape we want. Our next thing is to mount our aileron mount. So what we need to do is get our aileron mount, and you may need to do a little filing or shaping to get it to fit in here. But what you want to do is just get a bolt, put the mount in, slide a bolt through it, and there it is. The mount is in the exact place it needs to be according to the aileron. Now you just go ahead and back drill through the holes that are in your aileron mount, and you're all set to go. Now this one's already been pre-drilled, so we'll put a couple clecos in it. But you can see this is how we got our alignment. Our aileron still fits perfectly within the shape of the wing, and now our mount's in place and we're ready to go. Now the inboard mount is done very similar, except you've got a measurement on how far it needs to be in, and there's some little shims that you want to make that go in here, and you basically make your shim, put in here, go down to the other end and fit that all up and drill your mount on like this. Keeping these in here keeps it nice and firm for you and keeps your shape. You can see here the little spacer that you have to make to go into the tip aileron mount. And that's to just take up the slack. You got a washer, your mount, little spacer. Once your inboard mount is in place, again you have to make a little spacer that goes in here, and you have a washer, your mount, and spacer. This is because on the other side you've got your attachment for your aileron controls. So once these are made, then the aileron's all fitted, and your next step is to go ahead and permanently rivet your aileron mounts on, and where you've got your 1/8 inch clecos holding your aileron brackets on, you can go ahead and drill them out and put your bolts in. One last thing before you rivet the aileron mount on the inboard side is you got to remember to put your W625 in. Since it uses the same holes that your aileron mount used, all you have to do is draw yourself a black line down through the center of your rib, put it in place, and back drill through the holes that you had already. Once that's in place, you can draw on your skin and mark where you want to drill your holes, and drill your holes on your bottom skin. Then go ahead and take a piece of duct tape, and you can tape across, and that'll hold that rib from moving back and forth. And you put your top skin on and go ahead and drill your holes through your top skin. You're probably going to have to just do a little measuring, like measure from this hole to where this hole would be, and from this hole to this hole. Mark your holes and then drill. But you can drill this in place. So before you can put this mount on, don't forget you got to do this, because this will be put on with the mount. And once it's drilled and deburred and dimpled, you can go ahead and paint it, and it's ready to be put in place with the aileron mount. Now that your aileron's mounted, you have to go ahead and fit your aileron gap seal up. This is what it looks like. Now the only thing we've had to do is cut some notches on the end here, and that's just to give a nice fit around the aileron brackets, the aileron mounts. We've also gone ahead and drilled our holes for our rivets. Now what we'll do is we'll actually fit this on the airplane, or the wing. We'll drill our holes in the spar, and then there's a measurement that they give you on plans number 16 on just how far this edge needs to come out from the spar. And we'll go ahead and fit that and actually put the top skin on, and you have to mark it and cut a little strip off to get a nice fit. And then once you've got it fitted, you'll actually drill through the top skin into this and get it mounted on there. And we're going to do that here right now. We start by just simply duct taping the aileron gap seal on and bending it up into position and duct taping it on the back. Once we've got it in position, then from underneath we start in the center and we just start drilling out until the whole bottom of the aileron gap seal is drilled on. Once we've drilled and clecoed the aileron gap seal from the inside, we can go ahead and put the top skin on, and then we can measure right here. As you can see your spar, and just measure in here and get your measurement that you want. And what you can do is you can actually drill through the holes in your skin and put a cleco or two to hold the gap seal in place temporarily, and then you can check it to make sure it's going to give you the clearance that you want. Put your aileron on, and then once you've got it temporarily clecoed, then you can go ahead and draw your rivet line on your top skin and go ahead and drill it in place. Then you need to take it off and trim it, because you need to trim that excess aluminum off. Once you get the aileron gap seal in place, you can hold it with a couple clecos that are going through the skin into the spar, like this one and this one is. Then you draw your line on the skin. So you line it up with the aileron gap seal. You go ahead and start in the center and just drill through the skin into your gap seal. Now we used 1/8 inch clecos here because we're going to pop rivet this on, because we're putting the top skin on last. So once you've done that, you're ready to go ahead and take your aileron and store it away. You're done with it. Take your gap seal off, and like I said, you have to trim this excess that comes up over the spar. You want to trim that off, and then you're ready to put it away, because you won't put it on yet until you've got the top skin on. Mounting the flap is a lot like mounting the aileron. You use the same wing template. You leave your aileron on because you need a little reference between the two. Go ahead and put your wing template and mount your flap on. Now what we've done beforehand is we've mounted drilled all our holes in our mounting hinge. Once we've got it set in the template, we leave our hinge on the outside, and we get our measurement between the flap and the aileron. We can also get it nice and level here. And once that's all ready, now we're ready to start in the center and drill these holes. Now a couple things: if you don't have enough skin here, you can get a bigger hinge from VANS. I think most of you will find that you've got plenty of skin there. So once it's all in place and we've clamped it on the ends and got it right where we want it, then we'll go ahead and drill our holes. Now these are just to get the holes in the skin, because this hinge actually goes on the inside. So once we've drilled our holes, then we'll take this off and we'll start mounting the flap brace. Once you've got all the holes drilled in the skin, we go ahead and take the flap off temporarily. Next we want to prepare our flap brace. Now it's just been made by drilling the holes according to the plans. We've also modified the one end, and how we did that was actually clamped it to the skin, and you can see where you need to cut this line and cut this hole out here. We've then gone ahead and drilled our 1/8 inch holes the length of the brace, and you want to make sure that you don't the ribs don't interfere with the holes, so you may want to mark where the ribs are so you don't try and put a hole right where a rib is. Now that this has been all modified and drilled, we simply just fit this up under here like this. Over top of the holes we've got, we'll take some cleco side grips and we'll drill through these holes into the flap brace. Now that we've got the flap brace drilled and clecoed on the bottom, we want to make sure it's in alignment. So what we do is take a straight edge and just put here and check on the side, and then you clamp it from the back side, clamping the other side of the flap brace. And this is a two-person project. You want to have one person out here making sure the skin's lined, because you can create a bow in here if you're not careful. So you just want to go along here with a straight edge, make sure it's nice and straight, and clamp it from the back side. And once you've got it all clamped in place, now you're ready to just back drill through your flat brace up into your spar. And you can just start in the middle as always, and just from here, just start up and work your way right on down, clecoing as you go. And once you've dimpled and deburred and done all that you need to do to your flat brace, you're ready to rivet it on. Now, one thing you might want to do before you rivet the flat brace on is cleco it all on with the hinge pin in, and push the hinge pin up until it touches the aileron mount here. Mark with a pen where that touches, and what you're doing is you're going to drill this hole right here. And that's so you can get this pin out of your flap, because once the wing is on the plane, you've got no other way to get the hinge pin out. You can see the pin, get it out here for you. The pin that holds the flap on will come through that hole, and that's how you'll mount your flap after the wing is on. So this is easier to do before the flat brace is solid, so you can pull this skin just a little bit to get in there with a long drill bit and drill that hole. You want to keep your pin in there. It'll help keep the alignment of your hinge as you're riveting. And you can just start in the center here with your rivet and your hand squeezers, and go ahead and squeeze all the rivets in. Once we've done that, we go to the back side, and you can squeeze most of them on also with the hand squeezer. Now that the ailerons and flaps are mounted on, there's a few more things you need to do before you're ready to put the top skin on. Namely, you have to make up your aileron push tube assembly that goes from the bell crank to the aileron. And there's a little filing that needs to be done on the rear spar to make room for that assembly. So we'll go around to the top side and we'll show you how to figure that up. First thing you have to do is place your aileron bell crank in a neutral position. This position is on plans 19, and basically you measure from the edge of here to the center of your hole, which should be 1 3/16. So what I've done is taken a little piece of aluminum strapping here and some side grips and just clamped on here so this won't move. Once I've got my measurement, and so now the bell crank's in a neutral position. Now that the bell crank's in a neutral position, we go ahead and put our rod end bearings and a threaded rod end into it. Now we don't screw it all the way up. We want to leave maybe 1/4 of an inch to give us a little play here that we can adjust. Down on the aileron, we've done the same thing. Put the rod end and the threaded rod end. So next we need to measure the distance between these two. And you just run a ruler up. Use a cleco side grip. And come down to the other end at your aileron and measure it. Now the plans call for 18 1/8 approximately. We found we use about 18 5/8. Once you have this measurement, you can go ahead and cut your tube and fit it on, and then you have to do some filing to make sure you have enough play in here. Now to measure your tube, you want to put your template back around your aileron so it's also in a neutral position. So when these measurements were being taken, both the aileron and the bell crank was in a neutral position. Now before you take your template off, you want to use your adjustable protractor and see exactly what angle your aileron is at right now. And this is just to get a starting point. So I've adjusted my little pointer, so I know that at that point right there my aileron's in a neutral position. What we need to do now is file out this area in here to give room for our push tube. And as you can see, the tube moves in a very strange way as it does. It doesn't move straight back and forth. It moves in sort of an arch. We've already got our filing out done here to give plenty of leeway. Now how you decide when you have enough is you have to refer back to your adjustable protractor to see if you've got enough up and down deflection. Okay, to check our up travel, we start with our aileron in a neutral position, and we've marked it here, and it's at 80. So to get our 30 degrees means we're going to have to go past 90 to 80 to 70, and anywhere from 70 into the 60s is fine. So we start here at 80, and we bring it up, and there's 70, about 80, about 68 degrees right there. So that's about 32 degrees up deflection, which is plenty. We won't use that, but it's nice to have just a little bit more. Next, we have to check our down deflection. So again, we're starting at 80, and we want to go down 17 degrees, so we'll go 80 to 70, down to about 63. So we start in our neutral position at 80, and we go down, there's 70, 75, about 62, which is fine. So now we've got plenty of up deflection and plenty of down deflection on our aileron, and we didn't have any scraping on our push tube as it went through. The next thing we want to check is to make sure we've got a nice fit where our top skin meets the flap. Now with just the inboard skin on, you can see they're touching right there. That's what you want. You want a nice seal between the flap and the skin. Now the only problem this will cause is as you work your flaps, you'll scrape this skin. So what you want to do is from J.C. Whitney Auto Supply, you can get a stainless steel tape, and you'll actually cover this part of the flap down to about a ½ inch below where it actually touches the skin with this stainless steel tape, and that'll protect your flap from the skin. And you can either paint over it or tape it off when you paint. You want to put it on before you paint. Now that your deflection is checked, you can take your tube off and clean it up and rivet it together and paint it per the instructions. And at this time you want to make sure if you were going to run your plastic tube in your wing to run your electrical wiring, make sure that's in place. And now we're ready to put our top skin on and rivet it on and close the wing up. To start with the top skin, we start with the inboard side. Don't forget to put your wing walk doubler in the back here. We've clecoed our skin on only up for the 4 rivets, or 4 ribs here. We've hand squeezed these rivets in. Now, the next 4 row, right where the wing walk is, we reach through from the end, and we can buck almost all of these rivets. Once we do that, we'll actually take the skin, and peeling it back, we can now reach these other ribs, and we'll just work up 1 rib at a time until it's finished. So now we're going to start here. Ready?
Go.
Once you get as many of the rivets here as you can reaching in through the end, there are some at the bottom that you are going to have to pop rivets. You just can't reach. Now you peel the skin back so you can work this way and just work your way right on down. Ready?
Go.
Once you bring the inboard skin up, you don't want to bring it all the way up to the seam. You want to leave maybe 4 rivets open on the top and bottom. That's so you can peel the skin back just enough to get your outboard skin underneath of it. Then you want to go ahead and cleco your outboard skin and cleco the seam good. And then you're going to start off by riveting on the rib and then rivet your seam line. And this can be done easily by reaching through the inspection plate hole on the other side. This whole area in here can be reached a lot easier. Now what we'll do from there actually just peel the skin back, and you can see you can fold it up here, exposing the edge of the ribs, and we'll just work our way right on up, catching the rib, go across the top, catch the rib, go across the top, and just work our way right on out to the outboard skins on also. With this top skin riveted on, the only thing left to do now is your aileron gap seal. Don't forget to prime it. You want to prime on the inside, and you want to prime where it's going to butt up against the top skin. So you want to go ahead and put your aileron gap seal on, and then the only thing left to do on your wing now is your wingtip. Now we're ready to put the wingtip on. Now the wingtip we'll put on and then we'll take off for storage. We start by putting the wing on a couple of sawhorses with some pads under it. We go ahead and mount the aileron, and we put our template on. This holds our aileron in the neutral position. We then go ahead and take our wingtip, and here we've stuffed some paper in it, and this just helps to hold it out in the position. It's a little on the flimsy side to start with. Now it's going to take a little bit of trial and error, but what you want to do is fit the wingtip on, and probably the first thing you're going to have to do is cut these notches right here. And this is to allow for the aileron, room for the aileron, and you don't want to cut any more off than you have to right now. They tell you in the plans eventually you're going to want a 1/4 of an inch gap there, but for right now we're just trying to get this thing fitted on. Then we can go ahead and fit it up and try it. And the first thing you want to do is check to see if you got a gap here. There's a 0.25 notch in the fiberglass, and that allows your 1/2 inch of overlap to go in there to give you a smooth finish. So first you check to see if that overlap is big enough or small enough, and what you're probably going to end up doing is trimming the fiberglass a little bit. We've done that already. Then you want to go ahead and fit the tip up into the wing as tight as you can get it, and put a little duct tape on it. That'll hold it there for a second. Once you've got it pulled up real good and tight, the next thing you want to check is to make sure that it's fitting here with the aileron. Now with the aileron in the neutral position, you should have a uniform shape right on across, and as you can see right here, the wingtip's too low. So by lifting it up a little bit, using a side grip clamp and clamping it at the skin, we can now get it adjusted where it's nice and uniformed all the way across. The next thing we want to check is to make sure that the end of the wingtip is not high or low. And we do this by just placing a straight edge across. And it's not too bad right there. And you try this in a couple places all the way up, just to make sure it's not too high or too low. If it's too high, it means you have to lower it down, so you have to trim a little bit of the fiberglass off underneath. And you want to do this just a little at a time. It doesn't take much. Once we've got it fitted like this, then we take our ruler and we mark our 1/4 of an inch now to get our 1/4 of an inch spacing from our aileron, both top and bottom. And we're really ready to drill now. And we've already marked our rivet line here and marked our 2.5 inch spacing. Now, we don't pop rivet it on. You can pop rivet your wingtip on, or you can use plate nuts and number 6 screws. And we like to do that because we may want to put lights in here or a wingtip antenna or something, and we want to take this off for maintenance reasons. So now we're all set up and we're ready to go ahead and drill the wingtip in using an 1/8 inch drill and Clecos, because that'll be a hole that we can use for our screws and our plate nuts. Once we've got it all Clecoed and drilled on, now we're ready just to measure from the aileron over onto the wingtip and get our 1/4 inch measurement and draw our line. Then we'll take this off and take it over to the workbench and cut this final trimming. So it's a nice 1/4 inch, just like the plans call for. Once we've got our line drawn, then we just use our little cutoff wheel on the air drill, and we turn the air pressure down. So the drill turns slower. Now your first pass, you just want to give a good score, and then you'll make a couple continuous passes until you cut all the way through. Okay, once we're through, then to straighten up the edge, you can use a Vixen file. It works a little better than a regular file because a regular file will clog. You just put on there and work it back and forth to straighten your edge up. And there's the top ready to go. Now we just turn it over and go ahead and mark the bottom and cut the bottom off. Once we've done all our trimming along the top and the bottom of the wingtip, and we've got our 1/4 inch clearance in here, just like the plans call for, last remaining thing to do is to put the W412 rib in the wingtip. We've already put it in here, and essentially you can just slide it back in here, get some Cleco side grips, and just clamp it in place, and then go ahead and drill it according to the plans, and it's all in place. From here you can clean your cut lines up, deburr all your holes. If you're going to pop rivet, you're going to have to do just a little dimpling to pop rivet. If you're going to put plate nuts, then you want to go ahead and put your plate nuts on, and your different lighting options are up to you. Now you've seen the construction of our wing. The good news is our wing's done. The bad news is we still have another one to build. In building the wing, it's important, just like with the empennage, is take your time. If you don't quite understand what you're trying to achieve, ask some questions. Call VANS or just ask other builders. The wing will go together for you just fine. So from here we're going to go ahead and finish up our other wing, and hopefully someday we'll see you at a fly-in.